the professional services, I feel like there will always be work. There's always something to do. It's a profession where it's people, it's in particular in construction, it's buildings, it's structures, whether it needs repair, whether it's new, whether it needs maintenance. So the future is definitely bright. I think the thought and the concern is how fast we may get back to actually completing projects and projects starting up.
I'm also sort of optimistic about the future. I think certainly in the cultural sector, this is probably the defining moment of our generation, right, on several fronts. And I think that as cultural organizations try to move through reopening, I think there's going to be a major reckoning, and I think that there's excitement in that. And I think we're looking internally at our own structures, how we're staffing projects, how we're coming to conversations, who is speaking, and really thinking about how we can be of service in new ways as our organizations, who are major cultural organizations and small ones, really rethink their DNA in this moment.
I've attended a few discussions and workshops where some of the larger primes have been asked, okay, how do you plan on incorporating MWBEs? And there was some sort of hesitation and confusion, which was mind-boggling because the contract hasn't changed. The quality of our service hasn't changed. And I would employ the procurement officers of these contracts to not lax back and allow the larger firms to get away with, oh, well, during this time, we can't meet the requirements, because we're still here, we're still working, we're still strategizing, and we're still able to provide the same quality services that we provided pre-COVID. So I think it's important that the agencies, that all the MWBE directors and advisors and chief diversity officers, that's the word I'm looking for, to continue to push back and don't sign those waivers, because we're here and we are equipped.
Prior to COVID hitting, all the buzzwords were DEI, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. It was in every or virtually in every narrative that I saw on most RFPs, not only in New York City, Philly, et cetera. But how are you going to use these buzzwords if your processes themselves are not equitable, right? So how are you going to post something and the deadline's 1 week later and it's convoluted, complicated, and we're a resource staff that is in the business of submitting things, and it is still problematic and challenging. So fix your processes. If the processes are broken and you don't get at the results that you want, then why are we doing this, right? So I think within EDC, SPF, all the wonderful organizations that can bring about change in New York City and elsewhere, really look at your processes and systems to figure out what can you do to actually get at solving this problem. If your pipeline and your systems really discourage participation of subs and of primes. I mean, and frankly, I think, a lot of firms we've heard, looking away, moving away from that work. And I think it's great work to have. But again, if the processes and systems seem to be mired with challenges, we look elsewhere as a firm strategically.
One quick point, building on what Sunil was saying about contracting, a very difficult issue for, I think, all of us and every small business, right, is cash flow and getting payments. I have on the books payments that at this point are, invoices that at this point are aged by 7 or 8 months from government agencies. I've seen corporate, I've actually, my one target service area with whom I've honestly never had a problem getting paid is my nonprofit market. But government agencies and corporations, it can be a really, really difficult challenge. And I feel that big government agencies are used to working with big prime contractors who can easily float their work for 6 months. I know even for them it's not easy, right? But there seems to be, there's really no room in these processes for understanding that a firm of 10 or 15 or 20 people has to make a payroll every month and doesn't have the access to credit that larger firms would have.
You know, we actually work with a number of clients, nonprofit clients, on helping them meet their city and state goals. I think this is an opportune time for the city to take a proactive approach. We've been thinking a lot about as the city emerges and businesses are going to need to reopen in a way that's done safely. What are the ways that the city and other communities can create opportunities? We're working in the space particularly for Black-owned businesses, but it's, I think, applicable across the board to MWBEs. How can we help field and connect proactively businesses in the space that would fall under the categories of reopening services, like construction firms that would need to do retrofitting or outfitting, to be able to encourage certain city agencies to proactively access those firms by surfacing them and saying, hey, there's opportunities out there, and pushing them ahead.